Real-Time 1960s presents Evening Report, a complete roundup of today's news with Joe Rubenstein.
Good evening. In Washington, President Johnson holds his first televised press conference. In Milwaukee, Dr. Martin Luther King speaks out. In South Vietnam, another coup d'etat. A female senator runs for president. A rock and roll song is called Pornographic. And Cassius Clay creates chaos. Those are the headlines. The details after this message.
Nothing says lovin' like something from the oven, and Pillsbury says it best.
Try all three: delicate butterflake rolls, flaky delicious crescent rolls, and brand new Parker House rolls with real butter already spread inside. Refrigerated in the dairy case. All from Pillsbury.
In Saigon Wednesday, General Nguyen Thanh, the pro-U.S. commander of South Vietnam's 1st Army Corps, seized power in a stealthy, bloodless coup d'etat. After Khan's paratroopers, backed by tanks and armored cars, took over government headquarters and key points around Saigon, Khan imprisoned 4 members of the ruling military junta, which itself had overthrown President Ngo Dinh Diem last November 1st. Khan told U.S. officials that the 4 arrested junta members had been plotting with French agents in Saigon to push the country toward neutralism. President Charles de Gaulle of France recently suggested the reunification of North and South Vietnam, free of foreign influence, along neutralist lines. On Thursday, Khan met with U.S. Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge. Sources said he assured Lodge that he would press the campaign against the communist Viet Cong and that there would be minimal disruption and reorganization as a result of the coup. This afternoon, President Johnson made his first public statement on the coup at his first televised press conference.
I have received assurances from the new and friendly leaders of Vietnam that they are proceeding immediately to step up the pace of military operations against the Viet Cong, with specific instructions to the Corps commanders and a personal visit by General Khan to the vital Delta area. And now I would like to conclude by reading a brief message that I have just sent to General Khan in Vietnam, in which I say, quote, "I am glad to know that we see eye to eye on the necessity of stepping up the pace of military operations against the Viet Cong. I particularly appreciate your warm and immediate response to my message as conveyed by Ambassador Lodge and General Harkins. We shall continue to be available to help you to carry the war to the enemy and to increase the confidence of the Vietnamese people in their government."
Mr. Johnson rejected President de Gaulle's suggestion that Vietnam be reunited and neutralized.
If we could have neutralization of both North Vietnam and South Vietnam, I'm sure that would be considered sympathetically, but I see no indication of that at the moment. I think that if we could expect the Viet Cong to let their neighbors live in peace, that we could take a much different attitude. But as long as these raids are continuing and people are attempting to envelop South Vietnam, I think that the present course we're conducting is the only answer to that course, and I think that the operation should be stepped up there. I see no sentiment favoring neutralization of South Vietnam alone, and I think the course that we're following is the most advisable one for freedom at this point.
In the view of administration officials, de Gaulle's plan, which would include withdrawal of U.S. military forces from South Vietnam, would leave that country at the mercy of the Viet Cong, whose position has grown considerably stronger in the past year. President Johnson and his associates believe the fall of South Vietnam to the insurgents would create the effect of falling dominoes in the region, eventually resulting in communist control of all of Southeast Asia. This view was held by the Kennedy administration as well. On Monday, Dr. Martin Luther King, addressing an overflow crowd of 6,300 at the Milwaukee Auditorium, challenged his listeners to eradicate 2 myths about civil rights. The first myth, he said, was that only time can solve the problems of racial integration. The second was that civil rights legislation was not important. Regarding the latter, Dr. King said, quote, "It may be true that you cannot legislate morality, but behavior can be legislated. Law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless." Unquote. At a press conference before the rally, Dr. King stressed the critical importance of the pending Civil Rights Bill.
The defeat of that bill would be very tragic and unfortunate for the nation. I think it would bring about a great deal of social disruption. And I'm sure that we would see demonstrations on a scale more extensive and larger than we've ever seen before. It would bring about so much discontent and disillusionment and even despair in the Negro community that these outbreaks would be inevitable.
Dr. King then addressed the controversial issue of de facto segregation in public schools throughout the country.
Honesty impels me to admit that you cannot permanently solve the problem until the problem of housing discrimination is solved. I don't feel, however, that we must use this as an excuse for the continuation of de facto segregation in education. I would strongly favor busing students from one district to another, as they are doing in some cities. I think it's so important for children to grow up with healthy outlooks and world perspectives, and they must not grow up stigmatized as a sort of untouchable in a caste system, as an individual inevitably does when he lives in a system of segregation. So I think even though housing discrimination is still existing, this must not be used as an excuse for the continuation of segregation in schools.
Finally, he was asked what approach might be taken to achieve racially integrated schools.
Well, I would start, as we do in any nonviolent thrust, through the method of negotiation, trying to get the school boards to see the reality and the existence of the problem and try to get them to rectify it. Now, if they do not move on through negotiation, then I would strongly recommend some type of dramatic action program in order to bring this issue out in the open, such as nonviolent direct action encompassing school boycotts or this kind of thing. I think it's often necessary to do this in order to dramatize the indignities and the inequalities that the Negroes face and that the whole community faces as a result of school segregation.
At today's press conference, President Johnson was asked how confident he was that the pending Civil Rights Bill would become legislation that was satisfactory to him and to civil rights leaders.
We have reported the Civil Rights Bill from the Rules Committee, and it's now being debated in the House. And I hope and I believe that it will be passed without any crippling amendments. I think it should be passed without any crippling amendments, and I think that due progress is being made there. I hope it's acted upon in the House before the members leave to attend the Lincoln Day birthday meetings throughout the nation, because it would be a great tribute to President Lincoln to have that bill finally acted upon in the House before we go out to celebrate his birthday.
He was asked if he expected a filibuster when the bill reached the Senate, and if the bill would need to be substantially trimmed before passage.
No, I do not think it will have to be substantially trimmed, and yes, I do expect a filibuster.
I'll have more news for you after this message.
This message can save you hours and hours of pain, headache pain, pain, depression, pain, tension, pain, anxiety, pain, fatigue, pain. It tells of today's Anacin, the tablet that is strongest in the pain reliever doctors recommend most, contains more of this pain reliever than any leading headache tablet. Just take 2 of today's Anacin tablets. In minutes, headache pain is gone, so depression's gone, tension, anxiety, fatigue, pain gone fast. Next time pain strikes, remember today's Anacin tablet is strongest in the pain reliever doctors recommend most, contains more of this pain reliever than any leading tablet. Anacin.
Here again, Joe Rubenstein.
In Washington Monday, Republican Senator Margaret Chase Smith of Maine said she would enter the presidential primary in New Hampshire, scheduled for March 10th. The announcement was not unexpected, but even the senator's best friends did not know what she would do as the moment of decision approached, and apparently, the senator herself was unsure. As she addressed the Women's National Press Club at the Mayflower Hotel, Senator Smith had with her two possible statements to read at the end of her speech. One saying she would run, the other that she would not.
As gratifying as are the reasons advanced urging me to run, I find the reasons advanced against my running to be far more impelling. For were I to run, it would be under severe limitations with respect to lack of money, lack of organization, and lack of time because of the requirements to be on the job in Washington, plus the very heavy odds against me. So because of these very impelling reasons against my running, I have decided that I shall.
A few days after her announcement, Senator Smith was interviewed by Republican Congressman Harold Ostertag of New York on Report from Congress, a public affairs television program. The congressman, after noting that the senator had listed reasons why she should not be a candidate in her speech, asked her why she should be a candidate.
Well, that's good, putting it in the positive. For a year, I have been having letters from over the country asking me to think seriously about becoming a candidate for the presidency. I was highly complimented, not very serious about it. But when the letters looked like they were sincere, I did give it some thought. I looked over my own calendar, but I found that, of course, I don't have any time, I don't have any money, and I don't have any organization. But I do have what I consider one of the fine records in Congress. I seem conceited, but I'm not. I'm very proud of my record. And I think that 23 years of service to the people and legislatively are worthy of consideration, and I'd like to be president.
She was asked what the most important issues of the presidential campaign would be.
I don't know which will be most important, but I think foreign policy will be pretty basic, with Laos and Cuba and Panama and Vietnam and now Cyprus and all the rest of the trouble spots in the world. I would presume that the heavy spending would be another issue.
Finally, Senator Smith, who serves on the Space Committee as well as the Armed Services and Appropriations Committees, was asked if the U.S. should have a female astronaut in our space program, as the Soviets do.
Well, Congressman, I think of women as people, and I think if the women have the qualifications to go into space and the same qualifications that the men have, I can see no reason why they should not be chosen.
No, I don't either, and probably we will have sooner or later.
On Thursday, extremists left and right were accused of exploiting President Kennedy's assassination to advance their political agendas. A fact-finding committee of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith declared that such extremism, quote, presents a clear and present danger because it tears at the democratic fabric of our republic, unquote. The committee's findings were based on observations of public meetings and publications. The report said a majority of Americans now believed that the slayings of the president and his alleged assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, were the result of organized plotting rather than individual actions. This, the report said, quote, can be attributed to two causes: the psychological need to believe in meaning and design rather than absurdity and anarchy, and the influence of various extreme groups, which for years have been preaching the existence of plots and conspiracies in U.S. life for their own dedicated purposes, unquote. Right-wing extremism, the committee said, included Gerald K. Smith's contention that Kennedy was killed by a communist because he was, quote, preparing to double-cross the Russians and move to the right, unquote. A theory published in Common Sense, a right-wing Union, New Jersey publication, stated, quote, Kennedy outlived his usefulness as a front for communism and the Jews, unquote. The same article suggested that the president may have been, quote, liquidated by those who posed as his best friends, unquote. Looking at foreign publications, the Arab press, quote, generally pointed out that Jack Ruby was Jewish and spoke of a Zionist plot, unquote. The Chinese nationalist press contended that the Chinese communist regime was behind the president's murder while in South Africa, white supremacists blamed the American Communist Party. On the extreme left, Soviet reports expressed the view that Kennedy had been killed as part of a right-wing plot. A number of communists on both sides of the Atlantic felt such a plot was tied up with the Ku Klux Klan and the John Birch Society. Mike Gold, columnist for The Worker, an American communist semi-weekly, said, quote, "The new president's future depends on what he does, checking the first big fascist putsch in America. If unchecked, they will strike again," unquote. The committee said one of the most bizarre theories was printed January 9th by the Los Angeles Herald-Dispatch, a Negro weekly, in which Waldo Phillips wrote that Kennedy was shot at his own request because, quote, "medical reports had indicated that he had less than 90 days to live due to an intensified terminal malign spinal cancer," unquote. The single common factor uniting all these theories is the fact that no evidence has been offered to support any of them. Louie Louie, a rock and roll song released last October by the Kingsmen, was condemned today by Indiana Governor Matthew Welsh as quote-unquote pornographic. The governor said that after hearing the hit recording, quote, "my ears tingled," unquote. Welsh fired off a letter to Reed Chapman, president of the Indiana Broadcasters Association, requesting that the record be banned from all radio stations in the state. A spokesman at WIBC, top-rated radio station in Indianapolis, said the record, number 6 in the nation this week, was number 4 at the station for the past 2 weeks, but was no longer being played, apparently as the result of the governor's criticism. Attempts to pinpoint pornographic content in the song have yielded nothing so far, as the Kingsmen's performance renders the lyrics virtually unintelligible. A spokesman for Scepter Wand Records, the company that released the recording, stated flatly today that, quote, "not in anyone's wildest imagination are the lyrics as presented on this recording in any way suggestive, let alone obscene," unquote. Sports, right after this.
Time for a break. With something nourishing, Mother says. But baby wants something good. Well, beechnut orange juice is specially formulated, so nutrition tastes delicious. Every ounce gives him the full daily requirement of vitamin C, and the tree-ripened oranges are gently strained to keep out excess peel oil for digestibility and flavor. From first cereals through junior foods, nutrition tastes delicious when it comes from beechnut.
On Sunday, heavyweight champion Sonny Liston arrived in Miami from Las Vegas to continue training for his February 25th title defense against 22-year-old Cassius Clay. The challenger and his entourage were waiting at the airport to greet him. By the time Sonny disembarked, the motor-mouthed Clay had been sounding off to a large contingent of reporters and cameramen for almost 30 minutes. When he first laid eyes on the champion, Cassius ripped off his tuxedo coat and yelled, quote, "I'm the champ, you're the chump. Let's fight right now. I want my title," unquote. Liston, who remained stone-faced, had to be hustled through a ground-level door to get to a VIP room for an interview. Once he was through it, Jack Nylon, the champion's advisor, grabbed a police sergeant and yelled, "Don't let Clay in." However, the challenger and his entourage were rapidly approaching. Liston's wife, Geraldine, already out of breath trying to keep up, was caught in the middle as the shoving began. While Nylon threatened to fight Clay's entire entourage, Liston's trainer, Willie Reddish, pulled Mrs. Liston to safety. For the next 10 minutes, as Clay banged at the door with his walking stick, the champion sat motionless, glaring at the door. Nylon, at this point chalk white and trembling with rage, told a police sergeant, quote, "I want that bum locked up. I'll press charges for disturbing the peace," unquote. Promoter Bill McDonald tried to apologize to Liston, stating, quote, "I hope you don't think I had anything to do with this. Fun is fun, but that Clay is nuts. Do me a favor and knock him out in 3 rounds," unquote. When order had finally been restored, Liston was asked if Clay's actions had upset him. Sonny paused and finally said, quote, "You know, even iron wears out. You can get enough of anything. I don't think he's a good challenger, and I don't have any respect for him. I don't like his talking about my personal life either. He should mind his own business," unquote. 2 days later, Jim Jacobs, co-owner of Big Fights Incorporated, a boxing film production company, interviewed Liston after a training session.
How much road work have you been doing?
I've been doing 6 miles.
6 miles a day?
Yeah.
You think that's enough?
Well, I'm only trying to catch him, not to set in a track record.
I see. Well, now, some of the things that Cassius Clay has been saying, for example, yesterday he said when Liston fights Cassius the Great, everyone will compliment him for falling in 8. Do you have anything to say about that?
If talking was a fight, he done won this one. I can't. Ain't no use of me going in. The only thing I can say, don't get your tickets late. If they waiting on, it's only in the first round, they might miss it.
Well, do you think it'll end in 2?
Well, you can bet your life it ain't going 4.
Well, Cassius Clay said that you were 45 years old and that you don't belong in the same ring with him.
I imagine I don't, because I'm just that much better than he is.
Yesterday, Jacobs caught up with Clay, who was joined by assistant trainer Drew Bundini Brown.
This is Cassius Marcellus Clay. He's young, he's handsome.
They know it.
I saw Sonny Liston a few days ago, Cassius.
Ain't he ugly? He's too ugly to be the world champ. The world champ should be pretty like me.
Well, he told me to bet my life that you wouldn't go 3 rounds.
Well, if you want to lose your money, then bet on Sunday.
Oh, may I ask you
Because
this?
I'll never lose a fight. It's impossible. Tell him. It's impossible.
Never lost a fight in your life.
Ask any of my fans when was the last time they lost. I'm too fast.
Champion from
I'm
the
the
crib.
king. Born the champ.
Born the champ from the crib. Ah!
Virtually no one believes Clay has any chance of dethroning Liston. And that, for this evening, completes our look at the latest news on this Saturday, February 1st, 1964. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day tomorrow.
This has been your Evening Report, a roundup of the latest news with Joe Rubenstein.